Today we're looking at Native Americans. I'm going to look at the Eastern Woodlands tribes first. The Eastern Woodland area is located from Canada in the north to the Gulf of Mexico in the south, and from the Atlantic Ocean in the east to the Mississippi River in the west. This area contains coasts, rivers, lakes, mountains, plateaus, and low plains. The entire region was covered, of course, with forests. And people were divided into three groups: the Algonquins, tribes located near the Great Lakes, the Iroquois, and the Creek Confederacy. So the Algonquin group lived in the northeast. They were mostly hunters, but did some farming. They made clothes from elk and deer hide. The Algonquin groups lived in what was called wigwams, and they loved to make dream catchers. Great Lakes tribes were in the northeast. They were hunters, farmers, and they ate wild rice. Their clothes were made of elk and deer hides. Indians in the Great Lake regions lived in wigwams. Iroquois, they lived in the northeast section as well. They were hunters and farmers. Their clothes were made from deer skin, and Iroquois lived in long houses. Cherokees and Seminole Indians belonged to a group called the Creek Confederacy. They lived in the southeastern part of what is today the United States, northern North America. So they were farmers, hunters, and gatherers, and they lived in homes made from wood and thatch. Their clothes were made, of course, from hides and plant fibers. Southeast Indians, my bad, can't read. Southwest Indians. Southwest region, as you see here, now in Utah, Colorado, through Arizona, New Mexico, Texas, California. This area contained steep walled canyons, plateaus, and sandy deserts. To the south were mountains. You have 4 rivers run through the area: the Rio Grande, Colorado, Gila, and Salt Rivers. If you look here, we're talking about this area here. And this map will also help you with Activity 1. All these maps on here will. The Pueblos lived in the southwest. They were farmers and grew mostly corn. They lived in Pueblos, which these were a type of apartment building made of clay. Their clothes were made from cotton. Navajo lived in the southwest as well. In the early years, they were just hunters and trappers. Later, the Navajo became shepherds and farmers. Their clothing made from the hides of those sheep. Later, they copied, of course, clothes of the Mexicans, and the Navajo became expert weavers. Navajo Indians lived in what's called hogans. So the Apache also lived in the southwest. Their clothes were made from deer hides. Later, they copied the clothes of the Mexicans as well. They were raiders and hunters. They lived in thatched wickiups. They had one in the mountains and one in the desert. They would hold 2 residences. So the Northwest Coastal Tribes, once again, here's a good map for you. The Northwest Coastal Indians lived in what is now Alaska, along the Pacific Ocean, down the coast to what is today Northern California. This area contains small islands, deep inlets, and narrow beaches. Mountains rise to the shore, and thick forests of spruce, cedar, and fir cover the land. Many rivers and streams across this area. You're looking at this orange area here, and it goes down really to what is today Washington State, Seattle, those areas. But back then that was the California region. Northwest coastal Indians lived in the Northwest. They were fishermen, hunters, gatherers, and they gathered food from the forest. Northwest Indians lived in plank homes or wooden homes. They placed totem poles in the front of their homes. Little clothing was worn in the summer. In the winter, they made clothing from fiber and skins and basket hats. So, Indians in the far north, that would be up here, the Inuit. Okay, the far north is covered with ice and snow a large part of the year. The Inuit people, they like to be called Inuits, not Eskimos. Eskimo in their language means raw meat eater. They do not like being called raw meat eaters. So even to this day, you would want to go up. If you go up there, you call them. I would call them Inuit, not Eskimos. So they lived in the far north. They made their clothes from seal and caribou hides. They fished and hunted. Inuit people made igloos when they were hunting, when they were out on the hunt. Their more permanent homes were built of stone and earth. So don't think that they lived in igloos permanently. They did not. They only did this when they were hunting. So the next group, the next Native American tribe we're going to talk about is the Plains Indians. Here's that map that's good for you again. The Plains Indians reached the Mississippi River the Plains area reached from the Mississippi to the Rocky Mountains and from Canada to Mexico. It was hotter than 100 degrees in the summer and could drop to 40 degrees below zero with heavy snows in the winter. That is some weather extremes. This region was so dry that when it rained, it often flooded because the land couldn't hold the water because it was dried up. The rolling land was covered with grasslands and very few mountains or hills. Few Indians lived on the Great Plains before the white man brought horses in the 1600s. Cortez was the first one in 1521 to bring the horse over, really 1519 to bring the horses over to North America. And from there, the horses spread out. But by the time it gets to the Great Plains, it's the late 1500s. And this is where tribes really start moving into the area. Let's see if they give you some. That would be like the Cheyenne, the Sioux, the Crow. Those are just some of the tribes that moved into the area. Plains Indians, as you see, lived in the middle of North America. They will hunt buffalo. Their clothes were made from buffalo hides. Plains Indians lived in teepees. And they were known for being very quick to pack up everything that belonged to them in this world and be gone extremely quick. They could move from place to place, and for the most part, they were nomadic. They followed the hunt. So that's a little bit about Native Americans to help you out. I hope it did. And next we'll be talking about exploration.